Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where we are welcomed with Justin, longtime Bengals extraordinaire fan, on the show to talk about the upcoming game in Cincinnati. Last time we were in Cincinnati, we all remember what happened, and the Bengals were able to proceed in the playoffs. But we're going back, and then we'll see if the Ravens have any better chances, or if Cincinnati will get their first win of the year. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. I love the wording "able to proceed in the playoffs."
Hey, we gave you the privilege of one more game, two more games.
you gave me like the highlight of my life, so I'll forever remember that.
There you go.
Although, the mood changed a little bit yesterday, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, week one of the season, we were talking about it in the last episode. I went on a little bit of an unhinged mini rant. Like, on your opinion, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank, excluding the Bengals game, this whole slate of NFL games that we had this weekend?
Just some nonsense.
Yeah.
I did. Like, as always, I put a few bets down, just cheap parlays, and there was one I lost every single leg because it made no sense. But yeah,
it was definitely random.
Yeah.
Well, and there's some teams like the Cardinals who don't have a quarterback but should any day now, and they're in a weird spot. And yeah, it feels like rosters are still. We got a few weeks till rosters are locked.
An extended preseason, almost, one might say. Which is certainly, I'm sure, how you and the rest of Bengals country must want to view what happened on Sunday, because that was, looking back on it, though, you guys have had a little bit of trouble with Cleveland, interestingly enough. I think we look back 1-5 over the past 3 seasons it's been against Cleveland. Is there a reason for that, or is it just bad weeks?
That is the $1 million question. I thought for the longest time it was just Andy Dalton and his deal, but Burrow continued the trend, and it's typically in Cleveland. I think this is the longest road losing streak for the Bengals of this rivalry that's been going on for 60 years now, of 5 straight road losses. Yesterday was the weather. I'll throw that out there. There was some bad weather, but overall, it's always seemed like, for one reason or another, the Bengals defense always had Joe Flacco's number, and I didn't know why. It was just, that was what you could count on 80% of the time. And Burrow and the Browns, maybe Mahomes and the Chiefs against the Bengals will be the same way. It's just that one team. Tom Brady never had any kind of iffiness. It was always him versus Manning. I guess they were each other's, but I wish I had science behind me on this one, but it just happens. It's a thing.
Can confirm from the Ravens' perspective, yeah, Joe Flacco and the Bengals, with the exception of a couple games, it always seemed like the offense was going to be just held in check that game. Just very interesting. But yeah, I mean, so looking into this game, I don't know how you feel, Alec, but as far as what happened with the Bengals last week, I couldn't care less. I think it's going to be a new week. The Bengals are coming home. This will be their home opener. You have to have short memory in the NFL, and I'm sure that the Bengals, just as the same with the Ravens, will have no problem getting themselves psyched up for this game. And like we said, Ravens, we had our share of misfires as well. In week one, we just happened to have a much easier opponent and be at home. So I think both of these teams, we can look at what happened last week and say there's some things that both sides need to shore up going into this matchup.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that's the biggest thing to say. We had a out-division, in-conference game. You guys had an in-division game where execution's everything. There's a little bit of weather going on with you guys that could have impacted the game. So definitely one of those things that I'm not feeling any more comfortable going into it. Because, I mean, we had our own bugaboos to sort out, too. So everyone's still trying to figure everything out. I did end up watching the highlights of the Bengals game, and this was like a pretty generous highlight reel. I know it was probably at least 1/4 of the game. So when I was watching it, I definitely noticed, the Bengals are struggling with 3 and outs. T. Higgins had 11 targets and 0 receptions. Absolutely wild. The run defense looks really suspect. I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts on the run defense. They gave up 206 yards in rushing. Presented with the cover 2 shell the whole way through from the defense, and a lot of checkdowns because of it. Orlando Brown seemed to be getting a little exploited as well. So we'll see. Obviously everyone can adjust. I mean, Ryan Stanley didn't look great in our game. He is now injured too, and is week to week, so he might miss this game. I would say it's likely he will miss at least one game. So we're not immune to having our issues too. So definitely curious. From those kind of takeaways up there, do you agree with most of it? Any other insights?
Yeah, definitely. So I live in Kansas City, which has probably been previously mentioned. And so since last Thursday, the whole town, week one, because we lost to the Lions. So I already had that in my head, which helped. And I can say, week one, here we go. But yes, to your point, it really, more so than years in the past, I think there's a confidence that is there that the team and the fans didn't have before, that it really is just an aberration. In the opener last year, Burrow threw 4 interceptions against the Steelers. So we're used to it. And even the Browns game last year, 21-3, 24-3 was close to what the final score was, I think. I didn't look it up, but no one is worried. It feels, just like a bump.
I do think in this game, you guys did a better job on the defensive side of the ball than, certainly the offense. 24 points given up. That's not great, but it's also not a ton. And it took a while for the Browns offense to get going. It certainly seems that the offense, if that can get going, that could keep the game much better in check. Was there anything that really stood out as far as what went wrong on the offense? Was it simply just the coverage that the Browns had? I didn't watch the game, but I saw a couple of highlights. It looked like Burrow was having some difficulty fitting the ball in windows, particularly down the field. Or do you think he was just out of sync from that injury? Is it just still some rust from that, more so than what Cleveland was able to do on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it was more so being out of sync with everyone, especially with T. Higgins. Him and Jamar Chase, the first quarter, had the same kind of thing. Just Chase would turn right, the ball would go left, and they got it together. And Chase ended up with 3 or 4 receptions. But T, it was all over the place. They weren't in sync, and it just seemed like Burrow. This is compared to last year, a hugely different line. The interior guys are the same, but the tackles, left is right now, and there's a new left tackle. He missed preseason again, didn't play with this line configuration at all. So he was still getting used to, like Orlando Brown. He was still getting used to his setup at left tackle. Jonah Williams, I swear, a couple of times it looked like he instinctively shoved his player to the left, trying to force him inside just because he's so used to playing left tackle, and that led to some pressures. So there's just timing. It was rust was all I saw. And then once the offense sputtered, 10 punts in the game, the defense was just gassed. And you could tell halfway through the third quarter, the defense just had nothing left in the tank to put up a fight. And then the Browns just kind of ran over at that point, and that was the game.
Yeah, that's how they can get away from you for sure. One question I had for you on the offensive side of the ball, you guys lost Hayden Hurst to free agency and brought in Irv Smith, who's now your starting tight end. How did that work out in the first game?
He had a couple of receptions, nothing big, mostly on just little digs and drag routes to the inside where you'd want him to be. He did. I did notice his first pass attempt with Burrow was another missed timing where Burrow tried to hit him on the back shoulder and he had already stopped. And I don't know if it went down as a drop or not, but it wasn't in the right spot. But then he came back and got a few. So there was what you'd expect from a tight end, but hard to tell from how everything else went, if he's going to be more impactful or not.
And then you also guys had an acquisition of Nick Scott from the Rams to play safety alongside Dax Hill, but you guys also lost Bates and Von Bell. How those two look in their first game?
They had it's different when the defense gets out of sync than it is with the offense. But there was very distinctively, I remember in the second quarter, there was a deep ball that would have been a 50-yard plus touchdown catch, and they had a terrible hang up on who was supposed to cover Amari Cooper. But luckily, Watson wildly overthrew him, so it didn't cause any damage there. So they didn't give up a big one there. They had some other small miscommunications, but nothing that I think would be like such a burden going down the line.
So I think going back to the offensive side of the ball, something that can help out a quarterback who's working their way back from injury, of course, is the running game. On Sunday, you guys got that a little bit established. Mixon had an okay game, not a great one. You guys still have Chris Evans back there. You guys drafted Chase Brown in the draft, a guy that we really liked going into the draft, and this was someone who wouldn't have been too upset if the Ravens had selected him. How does the running game look this year compared to years past? I guess when you're looking at the running back room, what they're able to do on Sunday, and where the offensive line is as well compared to last year.
Well, to start, backtracking a bit in the offseason, Mixon taking a restructured contract to take a pay cut essentially so that he could stay on the team. That was, an initial good sign of just cohesiveness. He might have also just realized the reality of the running back market, but it was still good keeping him around because the three backups, no one has seen any kind of significant action since P. Ryan left and went to Denver after last year. So none of the other three running backs have started a game. And Chase Brown, he was actually a long shot to make the team initially on the draft, but he had a really good camp, and so a lot of people are hoping he's actually going to be working his way up the depth chart as a potential number two within before too long here. So with the running game in this game, the Bengals started off pass heavy. It started raining too much. Burrow actually put a glove on his throwing hand, which I've never seen him do. He was trying it out. So it wasn't working. So they immediately tried to establish the run towards the end of the first quarter, and it worked great. Mixon had a couple of big runs. He had one that was about 30 yards, and it was like, okay, great. We're establishing the run to balance the pass. And then in the second half, even though we were only down by 10 points, just straight back to passing and only using the run on, a play where you would be expecting a run. So it was like there was an attempt to establish and what looked like a good strategy, but then readjusting back the other way. So the running game, when it was there, when they were focused on it, was actually really good. But eventually they had to abandon that, and there was some mismanagement as well.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting looking at the snap count. Still looks like a very committed 11 personnel team, heavily running out the three wide receivers we all know. It's not no mystery who those guys are. And then you do see a decent amount of Irv Smith and Sample. The two of them are out there for 86% of snaps. So, yeah, definitely just, like I said, more like an 11 personnel team with a little bit of running back skin involved too, the running backs.
Yeah, it was very much here's a basic game plan and let's stick to the basics. And it just, that's all it was.
I think what's going to be really interesting to watch in this game, and by really interesting, I mean I'm really holding my breath on it. And we kind of hinted at it in the previous episode when going through and giving our thoughts on how the Ravens defense played in this game against Houston, is what's going to happen when we have the Ravens secondary going up against this receiving core for the Bengals. In 2021, that was a total disaster in favor of the Bengals. You guys put up, what was it? Burrow went over 500 yards in that second game, didn't he?
Yes.
Almost over 400 in the first one. But then last year was completely flipped. Burrow had two of his worst statistical games of the season, and then I guess if you don't include the playoffs, his statistics weren't weren't that big in that one either. But in those games, the Ravens had Marlon Humphrey back there. Marlon Humphrey might play this game, but that's still to be determined. Marcus Williams will not be playing. He did play in all 3 games last year. Pectoral tear. He's going to be out for some time. So we saw some good play with the Ravens cornerbacks. Ronald Darby, Brandon Stevens were out there, or Darius Washington against Houston. But this is going to be a real test here against the Bengals receivers. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I know they didn't play well against Cleveland, but you know that at any point they can get it going. So hopefully the Ravens are able to scheme up something good here and have a good plan, because I know while we saw a lot of good things on Sunday from these guys whose games we're still just getting to know, this is going to be a big test right out of the gate for this group, and it's one that I have to say, my fantasy assets of Jamar Chase will be happy if Joe Burrow and him figure it out. But definitely hoping that the Ravens defense here can fight hard in this matchup.
Yeah, definitely a concern. I don't think there's a single. The good news is I don't think there's really a single defense who you go in with their corners and are like, we are confident we can take down some of the best wide receivers in the league with how the game's tilted. But it's definitely worse.
2006? I think we felt that way.
It was a different year. I mean, it's a different league, man.
That's
like,
true.
It's just like it's just different. That's why I think you're seeing so many wide receivers get drafted so high, is because good wide receiver is good corner. The good corner will lose. Like they will always lose. That's just the way the game's set up at this point. And I think that everyone should be a little scared. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and I feel like this is my 4th season on the podcast with you guys. I think so. That's 8 games plus the playoffs. I feel like between COVID and injuries, there've been only 2 of those games have been actual full strength. There's always someone's down, or someone's ACL's torn, or someone's sick. We never get an actual matchup.
They got to play week 1, and then even that won't be good enough because there are people from the previous season that are still hurt.
Yeah.
Well, how many tweets were sent out in the last several months, and even right before the game, being like, I can't believe we're going to have these 3 wide receivers, Mark Andrews and J.K. Dobbins. Well, Mark Andrews didn't play last week. That never happened. We never saw that combination. It's just one of those things. The NFL is relentless with injuries, and not for long, as they say. So it's definitely annoying that so very often these games are impacted deeply by injury, and it's like, well, which team has least amount of injuries? That they might win.
Well, I guess then we can flip it then. Let's look at the other sides. We're talking about the matchup between the Ravens corners and the Bengals receivers, and we're talking about the Ravens receivers. Maybe at this point, are we saying that anyone on the Ravens is a Jamar Chase? Zay Flowers had a great first game as a rookie. I don't know if he's heading on Chase's trajectory, but he certainly looked great. We got Odell Beckham his first year in Baltimore. Had a gritty game on Sunday. And Rashad Bateman coming back from injury. He looked solid in his return there. So looking at what the Ravens are bringing in this year compared to years past, Justin, what is your opinion on the matchup between the Bengals cornerbacks and this revamped receiving room by the Ravens?
Well, it's actually, the revamping is what makes it interesting on both sides of the ball. As you mentioned, the safety core, the starting safeties, both new. We've got Chidobe Awuzie returning at corner, Mike Hilton returning at corner, but then Cam Taylor-Britt's a starter. You got Jordan Battle, the rookie in there, who just had an amazing training camp. So it's, with the exception of Awuzie, everyone else, and Nick Scott, who we just brought in, everyone else is either, brand new to the team or brand new to the league. So there's a lot of question marks, but they also all had really good training camps. It was one of the better positions coming out of preseason strength wise. So, it's young guys versus young guys. It actually should be real exciting.
Another place I wanted to talk about with you is kind of the pass rush. We know that you guys have some of the best pass rushers in the league, but it also added on to it with Miles Murphy, and curious how that group started off the season.
Honestly, really well. My wife asked me like who actually played well for the Bengals, and I said, well, Trey Hendrickson. He got Deshaun Watson a couple times, and he was getting around in there. So um, they at least, that position group hasn't lost a step between Hendrickson and Hubbard. Miles Murphy was brought in typically on third down packages or just relief plays. So he was okay in the preseason. He's kind of what you'd expect for a late first rounder, someone who's mostly there. But it's been great to fill in, and it's one of those, it's a contract year for the bigger guys, DJ Reader. So, if Miles Murphy can step it up on the defensive line, maybe they can let Reader walk, or if he's a stinker and we whiffed, which happens to the Bengals a lot, then they can probably just say, oh well, we'll have to pay DJ Reader again. So yeah, it was a solid game from the front line. They just unfortunately they got gassed. They got worn down. No one can play that many defensive snaps and still be fully there.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious how this Ravens running attack with probably, honestly, I think Justice Hill leading the charge with a little bit of Gus Edwards, how that's going to play out against the running attack or your run defense you guys have. I wonder too, like, will either of the teams get in such a position where the run game gets abandoned a little bit because of falling down? It's definitely a game where you could see a team taking a 14-0 lead, either side, just because, scored a touchdown and then the other team falters and scored another touchdown. Like, that's completely in the range of outcomes, and how quickly will teams change a game plan will really come down, I guess, to how they're feeling at the moment. But I could see one of the teams losing the run game quickly, and that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games where, Burrow can get hot or Lamar can get hot, and maybe the run just gets abandoned just for fun, just turns into a shootout. I mean, might have a good weather day this week. So
I'm trying to remember the last Ravens-Bengals game that was a true shootout. It feels like it's always either a defensive struggle or just one of the teams just scores a crap ton. But I'm sure if we think far enough, there might have been one. But I think for us, it's going to be interesting to see what the Ravens want to do with the run game. I will be beating the drum for us to get as much of Gus Edwards as possible. I think he's definitely shown throughout his career that he's an incredibly solid runner. I get the concern with maybe his skill set won't translate with the new offensive coordinator, but honestly, I did feel like he looked like the most impressive runner of the three on Sunday. Even though Dobbins had the touchdown, Edwards, I felt that he was the best out there. I was kind of confused why it took them so long to get on the field, so maybe that's an indicator that Justice Hill will get the primary snaps. But I think that we'll see a good, healthy mix of both Hill and Edwards. I think they'll get a similar number of snaps. We'll see if we see any of Melvin Gordon. He's going to be activated from the practice squad for this game. He is definitely not the Melvin Gordon of old. Didn't look that great in the preseason, but who knows? We'll see. We'll just take whatever healthy running backs we can get after the past couple seasons that we've had there. But yeah, running the ball, that's something that we've been able to have some success against Cincinnati there. And Cincinnati, I think some games you guys are able to run mix and some not. So I think it's really hard to say what we're going to expect here because really anything could happen. We've seen all sorts of things happen in this matchup, but I get the feeling it's going to be a defensive battle, though. Like we said, both offenses are having some issues with getting in sync, and I don't think those are all going to magically, get worked out in practice this week by either team. I think there's going to be some progress, I'd expect, but I think we're still going to see some kinks there that need to be worked out. So personally for me, and we'll get to score predictions later, I'm looking at this matchup. I think it's going to be a little more low scoring, a little more one of those classic AFC North scrum fests, even though usually those games are reserved for maybe mid to later in the season. I could definitely see this game turning into one of those.
Well, we'll see. Vegas, who's not always right, definitely has a more high scoring at the fair, but not crazy. 46.5 over under, and the Bengals are a 3.5 point favorite. So definitely one of those classic, like, this game could go either way. It's definitely a little bit of a toss up. I'm ready to go into the predictions though, because
all right, let's put them on the record.
It's one of those things, man. I wish we played you guys a little later in the season. I know we'll always play you at the end of the season, right? Yeah. But it's just like, man, particularly after this week 1, it's like, well, it kind of feels like we know this team really well. It's not that different.
Didn't learn anything new,
but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely curious how the Ravens are going to try to break out this offense a little bit more. We were talking in the previous show. It was kind of like, well, do like as little as possible to get enough value out to win the game was kind of how it felt they were trying to call the game. There was definitely some good, solid plays, but there was also a little bit of like, well, we have one play in the red zone. We're going to run it until they score or until they don't score. And while they were much more successful in the red zone this year, like, people were literally complaining. I didn't bring this up in the preview or the recap show. People were behind me were complaining, like, you did that the last time. Why are you doing it again? And then, like, we scored a touchdown on the play. They were still mad about it, though. They're like, all you do is run Justice Hill up the gut. And I'm like, worked. But whatever.
Spamming the A button.
Right. Yeah, people are like already losing their minds. I feel like you don't need to put like all this crazy window dressing on plays. Sometimes, that's all you need. But yeah, anyways. Well, I think we'll see a lot more plays. There was a lot, like the Zay package was a little out of control. Although it's hard to say anything's out of control with how electric he's been so far. But I think we'll see a little less than that and a little bit more of a more distributed, intentionally distributed passing game rather than like schemed looks. I think the amount of like truly schemed, not to say that most plays don't have, a progression or a scheme to them, but like there's really only one read on the whole play or it's dead. I think those plays will be limited this game. So as a guest, do you want to go first with the score and bold prediction?
Yes, the score, as is per usual with me, I will pick the Ravens to win in a little medium punch fest, 24-23, a 1-point victory. And then for a bold prediction, I will say that the Bengals hold the Ravens to. Oh wait, I was gonna give a rushing yards one, but then I was like, no, Lamar is gonna. I don't want to limit Lamar there. I'm gonna say Tyler Boyd scores 2 touchdowns.
Oh wow,
I like it. Well, I mean, I like it if the Ravens win. If not, no. But
is this the part of the show where I cut in Chris's takes? That might be.
So, score prediction, I'm saying 2017 Bengals on this one. I think that they're probably just going to bounce back from the game last week, and with all the injuries with the Ravens, I just think it's going to be a tough sled. So I'm going to say that the Bengals are going to win this week. As far as my bold prediction, I believe in Ole, man. I think he's going to continue his hot streak into week 2. I'm going to say that he ends up with 4 pressure events, and he's finally going to get that sack, hopefully off of Orlando Brown Jr. So, hope he does it next Sunday.
Peter, do you think you're going to be super bold, or should I go?
I don't think I'm going to be super bold, at least from my perspective, but maybe others will think that way. I also think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to go even lower in the points, 18-17 Ravens, also picking the 1-point score differential there. My bold prediction will be that this game will come down to the final drive. Now that I'm saying it out loud, this is actually getting really bold because I'm going to specifically say game-winning touchdown will be caught by Odell Beckham.
Ooh.
Not bad. Definitely a very interesting take. I don't think I'll be as spicy at all. Or maybe I have to up my game to make it spicier.
Yeah, I went with a very specific game flow and event there.
Yeah,
I'll have to fall back next week.
I think, though, I'm going to add this amendment to you. It has to be final drive of consequence. Like, if they get the ball back,
Right, yeah.
and then like just kneel it, fair enough. Because like they went ahead.
The go
with,
ahead
like,
touchdown.
Yeah, they went ahead with like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
They gave the ball back. Defense suffocates.
Go ahead touchdown. Okay, even if it's with like 12 minutes left in the game, if no one else scores, then
It was the winning touchdown.
okay.
This is really challenging because like I really don't know. I honestly feel like the Ravens are going to lose this game, just because like the Bengals played so poorly last week. They're going to try to like get the best of them. Maybe they played so poorly because they're looking past. Like, part of me just feels like this is not necessarily the game that's set up for the Ravens to win. But I also like don't see how they don't put up a huge fight, and how like it's so random that the wind can blow the other way. So I'm gonna still pick the Ravens to win. I'm just saying, like, I'm not so sure. Like, it's gonna be close, and I don't know. I think the Vegas line's correct not to favor us is maybe the best way to put it. I don't know if we should be favorites, but I still think there's a very clear path to victory. So I guess we're all doing scores first. I'm going to say it's a low-scoring affair as well, like just a straight-up like 2017 Ravens.
All right.
You know, classic, like you said, there's never really a shootout with these two teams. Maybe one day that'll change. I mean, they definitely have the offenses to do it, but definitely play each other really well. And then not many scoring plays here to look at, so I'm gonna go back to the defense, and I'm gonna say that the big swing play is one of those two linebackers get an INT. I guess that wraps it up. Somewhere in there, Chris had a great take. Ooh, it's so spicy. But thanks again for joining us, man. We really appreciate our conversations and insights we get from you.
Oh yeah, it's always a lot of fun for sure.
And wish you guys well the rest of the year. Always a classic, like, do great except for when we see you. Well, each other always handle our own businesses.
All right on.
Well, guys, you can find us on Twitter at One Winning Pod. Threads, it's still there at One Winning Pod. And you can also email us at onewinningpod@gmail.com. We're back next week with hopefully another Ravens win, and then on top of the AFC North. But either way, go Ravens.